We are back at it, and here's the plan for today. We are starting with continuing laying the 3-inch conduit for the primary electric service, and we want to get it as far as a little bit past the bend and see whether we can bend the pipe into about, it's like 41 degrees. Although before that, we'll let it sit there for a couple hours to cure, and in the meantime, we'll lay the 2-inch fiber conduit, and we'll also lay 1-inch conduit for our own networking for the cameras. For that, we also need to set up the post where the 1-inch conduit will finish. And then after that, we'll backfill the trench with sand, and we'll see how far we can get today.
So I've got my little cut station here. Okay, so my process is I'm going to try and find like a little routine. So first I'm going to deburr the end. Can you just tip the thing up?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm going to grab my block. Okay. So then primer, we do female, male, female. In cement we do male, female, male. Primer. Okay, you ready? Okay, so you're going to push it in and twist a little bit. Push in. Twist. And keep that pressure on for 30 seconds. I think it says 15. But if you don't, you can feel it actually push back.
And we have assembled the 3-inch conduit, and we'll leave it like this for a little while so it cures first, and then we'll try to bend it. But I think it should be fine.
We've laid our Schedule 80 3-inch conduit all the way up to the corner up there, and actually slightly beyond that, because we need to bend that around the corner. But we don't want to do it just as soon as we put the adhesive on there, so we're going to let those fittings dry and cure for an hour or two before we go back to those. So in the meantime, we've started on the next run of conduit. In the same trench, this is going to be spaced about 12 inches apart. This is 2-inch Schedule 80 conduit that is going to run in the exact same trench all the way along, and that will carry our fiber internet. So again, 90 sweep up to the pole. This time the fiber company doesn't require any standoffs or anything, so we're doing it flush to the pole and then bringing it down, and as soon as we can, we're diverging out the 12 inches to make that run all the way up here. And hopefully by the time we're up to the corner with the 2-inch, the 3-inch should be pretty close to cured. If not, we've still got the 1-inch to go after that.
It's the fiber company that requires it to be 2-inch conduit because of the length of the run.
Yeah, anything, I think technically we could have got away with 1.5 inches on this run.
No, it's too long for it. I reread the specs.
Was it 200 foot, was it? They want
something like that.
Yeah, basically for shorter runs they're okay with 1.5 inches. For longer runs they want 2-inch. We are plenty below their depth. They require 18 to 24 inches below. We're going to go the same depth as the electrical, which is 3 foot down, but then spaced horizontally apart rather than spaced vertically apart. It doesn't really matter to them which way we do it, but this way we get more depth, which, because we're crossing the driveway, gives us more protection on that conduit. Again, this is Schedule 80, so it's pretty sturdy stuff. But yeah, so we're running off the specs from the fiber company. We did reach out to them to see if they had anyone that could just speak to us and answer their questions, and they were like, no, everything is in the spec document. So we are following it to the letter.
2-inch conduit is in, and now onto the 1-inch conduit. This is 92 feet from the pole to this corner.
While our 3-inch and 2-inch conduits are curing before we make the bend all the way up there, we started putting in the final piece of conduit for this trench, and that is the 1-inch conduit you can see coming up this pressure treated post here. We're going to be installing an IP camera, a PoE camera at the top of that, and quite possibly like a Wi-Fi access point. It'll reach the pond from there. So just having that ability to get a conduit and some wire over to it is really useful. We have, at the bottom of the pressure treated post, we have put a couple of pieces of rebar through it as kind of an X shape. The reason being that we'll put some concrete around that. I couldn't get the depth I really wanted for a post of this height, so we've put it on some crush rock at the bottom to help with drainage. We'll pour some concrete around the bottom, and then once all the compacted sand is on top, hopefully that should hold it nice and rigid, which, considering that there's not really a big weight up there, it's just going to be a camera on the post, it's kind of lighter even than, say, a mailbox. So I'm hoping that should be absolutely fine. We're probably also going to run a piece of direct burial Ethernet cable along this same route, just next to that piece of conduit. The reason being that down here we've got a fairly sharp turn. It is only a 1-inch conduit, and I'm a little concerned that pulling an Ethernet cable through there is going to be quite a difficult pull. I wasn't able to find a longer radius sweep than that for 1-inch. So we're going to run a direct burial as well. It's a gel-filled cable, same one actually that we will use in the conduit anyway. And that way, at least we know we've got one cable in, and fingers crossed the conduit works as well. So a bit of redundancy there. So the camera we want to put up here is what's called an IP camera or a PoE camera. This is essentially a network security camera, and it runs over a wired connection, power over Ethernet, PoE, which means that the only wire it needs is an Ethernet cable. In our case, we're going to be using Cat6e, and that gives not just the power to operate the camera, so there's no batteries or solar panel or anything like that, it also gives the signal all the way back. This is really important versus a, say, Wi-Fi camera, because a Wi-Fi camera that runs on batteries is only really going to send back motion, which means that all of that motion detection, all the smarts for that have to be inside the camera to detect objects or anything else. By doing it with a wired camera, a PoE camera, that means that we can just relay that raw video signal all the way back to a server running in the utility building and do any kind of image or video processing we want to do there. This can do things like AI-based object detection, so rather than just saying motion happened, it can say there was a person or there was a bear or a deer or things like that. So there's a whole ton of different things we can do with that, but that is why where we're running cameras, we're trying as much as possible to run wires to them, specifically Ethernet cable, rather than the Wi-Fi battery-powered cameras. But now it's time to get laying the rest of this conduit.
We have the 1-inch conduit in, and now it is time for lunch. We also capped off or sealed with the duct tape all the ends because it is forecasted to rain this afternoon. The spacing is incorrect for now. We'll have a foot gap between the primary electric and the fiber, and the fiber and network, they will be close together because there's just communications cables, they can be next to each other.
Let's see if this bends. Can the 2-inch bend a little tighter against the 1-inch back there? Okay, so I'm going to bring the 1-inch round. Got somewhere there?
Mm-hmm.
So that wants to spring back. Bending back. Will it bend? It's like, do you remember that website, Will It Blend? They used to like blend iPhones and things. This is Will It Bend. Well, so can you get another spacer block in the middle of that radius?
Here?
Yeah. We have no shortage of big blocks. They might as well earn their keep. Yeah?
Yeah. So amazing how that trench doesn't look so straight anymore.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I think that looks awesome.
Okay, was it so hard to bend?
No, that actually bent a lot easier than I was expecting. I could definitely feel, as we've transitioned from 80 to 40 at this join here, the 40 is easier to bend. I could feel it wanting to bend there more than on the 80. But, I mean, it's not really stressed. It's only being held in place with a sort of a rock there temporarily and a couple of 12-inch spacers just to keep the spacing between the primary electric service and the other conduits. And otherwise, I think it's really good. So I think next up, there's a few little low spots. We just want to put some sand in. We also need to add the tracer wire, which is the requirement for the fiber conduit. I think it's superfluous because we're going to be adding the detectable tape anyway, but whatever. They want it in there. We're going to add that in, and we're just going to add that on the conduit itself. I just sort of tape it to the conduit every 10 feet or so. But yeah, no, that worked a lot better than I was expecting.
So we did not have to use a 45 elbow, or 45 long sweep radius, which...
Yeah, and honestly, it expensive, and also I don't think it would have worked here. This originally our plan was much more of a like straight line, corner straight line, but with the excavator they're able to dig this trench, sort of a sweeping curve, and actually you can probably see it's really not very straight down there. There's a good wiggle to it, which I don't think will really matter in terms of pulling the wires. It'll maybe make it a little trickier, but or a little more friction. Just shows how bendy even this thick 3-inch Schedule 80 pipe is. It's a warmer day today. It's 70 something right now. And I could actually tell this morning as I was deburring the conduits, as the day warmed up, it got easier to deburr. So the temperature definitely makes a difference on how pliable and how soft the conduit is. I wouldn't want to be doing this in the middle of winter.
Obviously, we'll take this rock out before backfilling.
All right, so this is the tracer wire that we're going to be installing. This is 14 gauge tracer wire as spec'd by the fiber company. If you are up on your tracer wire specs, you'll know this is the wrong color. This is yellow. This is the tracer wire that you're supposed to use, the color you're supposed to use for a gas line. Fiber should be, like any comms line, should be orange. I just wasn't able to seem to get hold of any orange tracer wire. So given that we have no gas on site, we'll label the end so it's clear what this really is. Yes, I know it should be orange, but this is just what we're going to have to use for now. So this is what we're going to bury on the fiber conduit.
So we got the tracer wire and we have the direct burial Ethernet cable in, and now we're going to backfill. And we're going to start backfill in this section here, so that then with the tractor we can drive over and get sand to this portion. And we already talked to our electric company inspector. He saw the trench when it was like dug out, and then he said he just needs to see the pictures once the conduit is in. And we have sent them over pictures, and they're good to backfill.
Well, that was hard work. We have filled in a little section here, basically a little bridge, which will allow us to get the tractor over to the other side and start moving down the trench so we can much more easily get in with the tractor. It's really hard with a tractor to get in on a diagonal. You can't get perpendicular to empty the bucket. So we've got this sand in here compacted, and it's now at the height where we're ready to lay detectable tape. And detectable tape is something that we're going to do on every single line that we bury, every single piece of conduit or pipe. We have two types here. The first is this red stuff, which is buried electrical tape. We also have one here, which is buried fibre optic tape. And we have two more. We have a blue one for buried water line and a green one for buried sewer line. We'll lay these down on top of every single conduit, and the idea is that they're foil and they're very visible. So if ever in the future we had an excavator come in, started scraping off some dirt on top, they would go in small thin layers and they would hopefully see that tape, and that would be the clue to them not to dig any further because there is something delicate, a line of some form below. But because they're foil, they're also detectable by, for example, a metal detector. So you can always go back and find them if ever you need to locate them and flag them and things. So this is something that we're going to do, like I say, everywhere across the property. Ideally, you want them to be about 12 to 18 inches below. The grade we've got here isn't the final driveway grade. There will be a top surface about 6 inches or so going on top. So we're going to stop here at this height and lay the tape. It's going to be a little bit tricky because we need it to go from the pole over here all the way up that conduit to the far end. So we're actually going to start pulling it from over at the pole, but we're only going to bury that section there. Once the tape is in place, we're then going to put some more sand and crushed rock on our little bridge. And like I say, hopefully then we can drive the tractor across it.
Our inaugural drive across our driveway.
We did it! We've made our bridge, and for the first time in about a week, we have been able to cross down to the downhill side of our driveway on the tractor. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. It's a bit of a tight turn and it's a bit rocky and things, but for just now, this is exactly what we need, because this now means we can get around to this side with sand and other materials to start filling in the trench. It also means that when the excavator's back tomorrow, hopefully they can help dump some sand and things in here for us as well, and that little platform will be a good starting point for them. So yeah, today has been an insanely productive day. I'm so happy with what we've got done today. We started off with just a sand-filled trench and 4 pieces of conduit in there. We've now laid over 30 pieces of conduit, 35 probably, for the electric, the fibre and the networking. We've laid the tracer wire on the fibre. We've laid the direct burial Cat6 cable for our camera. We've laid the 2 detectable tapes. We've built our sand bridge up using compacted layers of the sand and topped it off with some crushed stone just to stop the tractor tyres sinking in quite so much. This is awesome. I'm really happy. This is finally starting to come together. Obviously, there's a lot more still to do. We've still got, this is only about half the conduit laid. We've got to finish off the run up on that side, not to mention backfilling the trench here. But this has been a good day's work.
But the priority was to get the driveway opened up again.
Exactly. And that is what we've achieved today. I hope you've enjoyed watching us lay the conduit here and prepare to bring utilities to our site. If you have, be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already, and follow us along on this journey as we build our dream home here in Vermont.